The sheer diversity and admittedly obscure symbolic forms that reflect the physical appearance of the Soma plant have contributed to some of the confusion regarding the plant's identity. At this point, you can see why. Another source of disagreement among interpreters of Vedic mantras derives from the seemingly contradictive and/or conflated roles that Aryan gods and goddesses share in Vedic mythology. As already noted, Vedic dragons of the deep, the Asuras, wage a perpetual war on celestial serpent-slayers, the vrtrahans, aka Indra, Soma, and the Devas. Yet in other hymns, Soma himself is likened to a primordial serpent, or dragon, if you will. And yet other hymns refer to Soma also as an Asura. What? So how are we supposed to wrap our heads around that? Well, one explanation for these supposed contradictions, according to modern Sanskritists, is that the use of the Soma plant disappeared early in Indian history, and that the absent-minded Aryans simply forgot the details of their ancestral tales and ways, and became hopelessly confused about the original roles of each specific mythic player. But this makes little sense, because the Rig Veda, which is recorded in an archaic form of Sanskrit, its original form, introduces and conserves these paradoxes in their original form throughout the hymnal. In the combined roles as a serpent and/or serpent-slayer, one hymn in the 10th chapter of the Rig Veda, the 56th hymn to be exact, it identifies Soma as an Asura who finds the light. The light being an attribute of shining heavenly gods, the Devas. So it is not always clear whether an Aryan dragon is an earthly demon or an Asura with the potential of becoming a sun god, a serpent who lays in waiting on riverbanks to send his sun-like form skyward. It seems that such a notion is suggested in the following passage of the Veda. And it says, "You are shining of Soma. As such may my shining be. You are ambrosia. From death protect me. You are the Lord of kingly powers. Protect from the sky, following the serpents of the deep." So when the Samaveda identifies Soma independently as the pupil of the demon, as the very eye of Vrtra, or when the Satapatha Brahmana, an early commentary on the Veda, states categorically that Vrtra is Soma, we need not interpret these paradoxes as contradictions. It seems more likely to me that Vedic mythology simply frames the serpent and sun god relationship in two distinctive mythic scenarios. One in terms of a battle between the powers of the forces in the earth and sky, and another in the terms of a transformational process experienced by mythic creatures that are moving in and out of the realms of the waters and the celestial domains of the Aryan cosmos. If both themes are represented in Vedic mythology, then we can see why Soma Pavamana can be both a serpent and a serpent-slayer. Now, bearing in mind that the Vedic hymns were conserved faithfully by early Hindu and Buddhist communities during India's classical Indian time period, beginning around 2,300 years ago or so. We might expect to find similar symbolic and mythic connections between the lotus flower and mythic dragons in these derivative schools of religion. And in fact, we observe these expectations on a Naga callstone from the Museum of Chennai in India, where a seven-headed serpent, each head bearing a lotus crown, elevates itself into the heavenly realms of the sun and the moon. We note that the creature's singular but labyrinthine body actually surrounds, or should I say pervades, as in Vedic Vrtra, an array of 5 lotus flowers. And a much earlier serpent stone from the 2nd century AD establishes the symbolic connections between a 7-headed serpent and a triad of lotus stalks, but with emphasis on the serpent's interest in, or his protection of, a gorgeous lotus flower. Early reliefs on Buddhist stupas at Sanchimbarut that were executed some 2,300 years ago provide, I think, an explanation as to why the lotus plant is so closely associated with dragons of deep waters. These earliest known renderings of underground or underwater lotus stems in Indian iconography, the first in the archaeological record, identify the material source of lotus shoots as an Aryan dragon. Note how the stems are born from the mouth of the ophidian creature, and how they grow joint by joint, knot by knot, as described repeatedly in the Vedas. The helical uncoiling of this cosmic serpent's body implies that the creature is a never-ending source of vegetative growth. It's immortal. At this point in time, the Brahmanic dragons of the deep were usually referred to generically as either Nagas or Makaras. But the Vedic role of Vrtra was still a popular theme in classical and medieval mythology at this point in time. Oftentimes, these serpents are a hybrid or chimeric creature, sometimes with the head of an elephant, the snout of a crocodile, the coiling body of a snake, and occasionally a fishtail, which, when considered as a whole, suggests the Vedic character of a Druj, an Asura known as Vishvarupa in Vedic terms, his name meaning Vishva, all, Rupa, forms. This is because Vedic dragons were believed to have the power to transform themselves into any creature they so chose, by means of their serpent magic, known as Maya. And as we can see here, they can transform their bodies into pillared sun-like flowers as well, as Asuras that have found the light. A close observation of subterranean lotus stems demonstrates just how accurately Vedic Vrtras and Hindu Nagas mirror the physical features of a lotus rhizome. Each node of a rhizome is encircled by a pair of dark, leaf-like appendages called stipules, around which the plant produces a cluster of thin roots that grow as a bunch and penetrate the earth. So like the prehistoric chants assert, this plant grows joint by joint, knot by knot, before they raise a series of golden pillars. At the beginning of India's monsoon seasons, swollen stems, lotus stems, from the former year's previous growth send out long and white, succulent runners underwater that lay down roots at each node and send forth umbrella-shaped lotus leaves. But as the growing season proceeds, around 7 shorter and thicker stem segments are produced, and each of these engender a fertile shoot with a solitary flower, usually numbering around 7 in a flowering season. These usually come to full flourishing in the Punjab during early autumnal months of the year, August and September to be precise. After which, the leaves dry up and the thickened, flower-producing stem segments go into hibernation, while the previous year's stem growth tend to die, to turn black and begin to rot. This growth cycle repeats itself year after year, so the serpentine stems of the lotus plant, the ancient dragon, Vedic dragon that slips from his skin, appears to live immortally, growing in new growth and rotting from the tail end, forever. Cornerstones of the 10th century Hindu temple at Muang Lam in Buriram province of Thailand adopt an Angkorian style of iconography that portrays the body of a 5-headed naga as a never-ending trail of lotus flowers. As the serpent stem grows forward, flaming lotus flowers erupt directly from the creature's undulate body, while the cobra's numerous heads present lotus medallions on their expanded hoods, as if each one of his necks was a flowering lotus stalk. Not but a few hundred miles away in Angkor, Cambodia, a similar image places flaming lotus flowers upon the heads of the dragon. We note that this multi-headed cobra has emerged from the maw of a progenitor dragon, as though he has slowed his ancient skin. Like the serpent at Muang Lam, the central head disgorges a dangling lotus blossom. That Southeast Asians would associate their dragons with lotus rhizomes in the same manner as Indian communities at Sanchi and Bharut some 15 centuries earlier, should give us reason to assume that these same mythic creatures are likely descendants of serpent broods that once crept along the banks of the Indus River during prehistoric time periods of the Vedas. Aryan dragons of the deep are denizens of Earth's underworld, so they are Asuras. And they are closely affiliated, nonetheless, with a mythic figure that belongs to the sky. Actually a Deva, this one. And that would be the Vedic eagle of the sun, known as Garutmat. This divine raptor is also a vrtrahan, a serpent-slayer, both in Vedic and classical Hindu mythology. And he is identified as an independent sky god sometimes, or otherwise as an avian incarnation of several sun gods of Vedic renown, including the likes of Soma, Indra, and Agni. On the only island of the Indonesian archipelago that still conserves Hindu beliefs and traditions, that being the island of Bali, Garutmat, or as we know him today, Garuda, maintains his prehistoric mythic identity as a possessor and a distributor of elixir of immortality among the sky gods. For here the eagle's Soma urn, the Vedic Kailasha, is cradled by a lotus flower as he lifts himself into the heavens from a series of 3 lotus blossoms. Or on the walls of Bali's mother temple at Besaki, the mythic creature's head is actually equated with a lotus flower. All of these images are consistent, of course, with mythic themes of the Vedas. The all-seeing solar eye of Soma in the Rig Veda is occasionally described in the mythic image of Garutmat, in that Soma perches himself upon his vegetative pillar to display his blazing golden and ruddy feathers. Hymns dedicated to Soma Pavamana declare, for example, "Down to earth hath looked the heavenly eagle. Soma, with wisdom, views all living creatures. Or again, seasonal plants with feathers of the birds of air, with stones and with enkindled flames, seek him who hath a store of gold. Flow, Indu Soma, flow for Indra's sake. One is tempted to interpret, therefore, the feathers of the eagle as the petals of Soma's flowers. And in fact, Garutmat also goes by the alternative title of Suparna in the Vedas and in classical mythology, a title that can be translated as either fair-feathered Suparna or fair-petaled, because Parna has this dual meaning, feather or petal. And this is precisely what we observe in iconic portrayals of the Vedic bird god in the central plaza of Bhaktapur in the valley of Kathmandu. Here the lotus and eagle are golden-hued, and they perch themselves upon a pillar that is 8-angled, this being the image of a Vedic sacrificial pillar employed during prehistoric Soma-pressing rituals, known as the dhruva, the 8-angled, 8-sided dhruva. And do take note that this pillar erupts from an overbrimming, round-bottomed flask of Soma. Since the Vedic raptor's feathers are described as both ruddy and gold, the petals of the lotus flower and the feathers of the cosmic eagle appear to represent homologous features. A curious seal unearthed from northwest Pakistan that likely comes from the time period of the Indus River civilization, that is 4,000 years ago, portrays a symbolic theme that clearly reflects the widespread Indo-European mythic motif of a serpent-slaying eagle. While no vegetative feature is apparent on this seal, the repeating 3 orbs suggest here some sort of symbolism that is not inconsistent, I would say, with the notion of Soma's triple lights or triple births in the Vedas, since lotus flowers open and close for 3 consecutive days. And be this the case or not, we can turn to an exquisite lintel of the Chusya Bahal, that is to say, a courtyard monastery in the heart of Kathmandu, where, in contrast, a much more detailed portrayal of the Aryan golden eagle can be observed. Several features of this scene seem to derive from the tale of Garuda in the Mahabharata, an early classic epic tale that many Brahmins even still classify today as a quote-unquote late Veda. All the archetypal themes relating to a Vedic serpent-slaying event are represented here. We observe a pair of dragons paying homage to their conqueror as the sunbird seizes an urn of Soma from a lotus blossom. As Garutmat flies toward the heavens to deliver the nectar of immortality to the sky gods, he is donned by a petaled skirt, presumably to identify the eagle with his floral perch. In addition to Soma's avian form, the plant god is most often identified with either a metaphorical bull or a cow. As a creative female principle, Soma is identified as a cow with sun-like floral features, and also with very generous udders that swell with an abundance of milk to immortalize the gods. This is a celestial cow, I might add. Or just as often, the plant god is likened to a powerful rutting bull, whose stalks are full of semen, a semen called Vrtras in Sanskrit, another allusion to the elixir, to the sap of the plant, the elixir of immortality. The Rig Veda asserts rather succinctly, Soma, your stalk is a bull. Or Soma, flow on with pleasant stream, a bull devoted to the gods. So amrita, the Soma beverage, is identified as a cosmic seminal discharge, which issues from Soma's bull form during Soma sacrifices. To quote a passage dedicated to Soma Pavamana, "They have drained him, the steer of heaven, him with 1,000 streams, distilling rapturous joy." Or on a mythic level, this same virile bull calls forth a herd of lactating vegetative cows with his boisterous bellows, and then impregnates each member of his cow herd one by one, such that they may all yield a bounty of shining milk from Soma's stems. In ritual, Aryan priests are said to milk the radiant cow with their mortar stones. Cows whose golden bodies rise and shine as dawning suns. Ooh, very strange cows indeed. Celestial sun cows, I guess. Other hymns of the Rig Veda and Sama Veda liken the milked stalks of the Soma plant to a primeval udder of the solar bovid. Consider, for example, extracts of the Sama Veda. The divine, exhilarating, delight-inspiring, primeval udder, Soma, the purifier, has his seat in the heavens. Or, truly Soma has drunk from the udder of the indestructible cow, and, himself of surpassing intellect, flows down in many streams into one receptacle. So it is noteworthy that the first monumental stone lotus columns that appear in India's archaeological record, some 2,400 years ago, the first lotus pillars, are often decorated with bull figures in association with other Vedic symbols, such as chariot wheels, a symbol of the Vedic sun, and Soma's one-wheeled solar chariot. These lotus columns were erected by a famous Indian king, Ashoka by name, whose written edicts at the base of each of these lotus columns celebrate the king's role as a benefactor to all holy men of his age, especially Buddhist sages. But he includes all holy men that respect the Dharma, the religion. He erected these pillars in the name of Dharma, a term meaning literally cosmic truth or religion since prehistoric times. From the many hundreds of seals that have been uncovered among major sites of the prehistoric Indus River civilization, the most common motif that we encounter is the profile of a bull that stands before a dappled, chalice-shaped trough. A few historians have interpreted the squared net that surmounts the trough here as a Soma strainer. But there is actually little consensus as to what these bull images actually are meant to represent. And no less baffling are the various glyphic inscriptions that border the edges of these seals, the meaning of which have long evaded the efforts of archaeologists. But in a way, I guess the same can be said for the understanding of Vedic hymns, once you think about it. I'm given to wonder if the iconical dappled trough of this creature might not bear some relation to a similar shaped seed receptacle of a lotus flower, since they both share a nippled surface. But without a clear idea as to what the founders of the Indus River civilization actually believed in, nobody can really say with certainty. Only that many hundreds of these seals have been recovered that date from around 4,000 years ago. What we can say with certainty is that the tradition of associating lotus flowers with divine bovids is an enduring tradition in Brahmanic iconography, suggesting that early Vedic symbolism is, in fact, the source of this religious practice. One might also hypothesize that the sacred status of the proverbial holy cows on the streets of India today likely enjoy that status on the basis of the reverence of the holy cows that are related to the Soma plant. The most celebrated of sacred bulls in classical Hindu mythology and iconography is unquestionably Nandi. Nandi, the official vehicle of Shiva and his popular consort Parvati. Nandi's name means either joy or bliss in Sanskrit. And he is also identified as the guardian of Shiva's secluded lotus paradise. A lotus paradise, his homestead, which he refers to as Kailasha, the garden of Kailasha, which, as we recall, is a word that refers to a Soma vessel. And as a vehicle, Nandi frequently wears a lotus saddle, for this is the ancient seat of Shiva. We observe this attribute on a life-sized sculpture of Shiva's bull in central Java from the 13th century. And note that Nandi is comfortably reclined on a bed of lotus petals, further supporting his symbolic connections with the flower. Wherever we encounter Shiva's vehicle in the arts, we also run into the bounteous, wish-fulfilling cow of classical Brahmanic mythology known as Surabhi, the mother of all Soma-bearing cows. She is born in classical mythology during the famous churning of Vishnu's milky ocean story, a popular myth that relates to the extraction of Soma from Vishnu's cosmic ocean of milk, of amrita, at the dawn of creation. In central Java, Surabhi is partially personified and upholds the source of her milky treasures, a lotus flower. And since this cow goddess's name means literally, Surabhi, fragrant or pleasing, and she goes by an alternative name of Kapila, meaning ruddy, one of several terms that describe the ruddy hue of Soma in the early Vedas. Her titles and lactating form complements her associations with milk-producing stems. We normally don't refer to a cow as being red, fragrant, and pleasing. But to a lotus flower,